This little beauty right here is a GPU, and it's produced in Taiwan. And this is the reason it's highly unlikely that China is going to attack Taiwan anytime soon. We here at Pilgrimage Films don't like to get too political. We like to be known for what we stand with instead of against, although we do cover religion, so I guess we do offend people all the time and stand against quite a lot. But today we're gonna get political because recently we've seen a lot of talk about the cross-strait issue between Taiwan and China, and we feel it's necessary to address this. And no, this is not a clickbait video to get views. If I thought that was the way to success, we would have done that before. But this actually affects us because we live in Taiwan. Unlike somebody who's on the news, I actually have a lot of skin in the game when it comes to not wanting me, my family, those under my leadership, or my friends to get bombed. Like, I live here. It affects me. In the last 2 weeks, I've had about 7 different people who've communicated to me that they're really concerned about my safety and I need to leave the island now before I die.
Leave now! And never come back!
And some of the concerns have been actually hilariously edgy. I've spent hour after hour researching the subject, and through it I've arrived at a pretty confident conclusion for me, and that's Taiwan is a really safe place to live. I have a long list of reasons why I don't think it's likely we'll see Taiwan get invaded anytime soon, but today I'm going to be covering the biggest one. Recently, worldwide tensions have just thrust Taiwan in the international spotlight, and multiple times a day I'm now hearing people say stuff like,
and now we have seen Russia take over Ukraine. Taiwan is probably next.
Make no mistake, it's Ukraine today, Taiwan tomorrow.
And make no mistake that China is going after Taiwan.
We obviously have China watching very closely because my fear is Taiwan will be next.
But I am extremely confident that the current scenario playing out on mainstream media is actually severely underthinking the situation. But you're different. You don't listen to some talking heads in the nightly news and regurgitate what they say. You're a dignified, classy person who wields the power of intellect. When the scuttlebutt around the office turns to international politics and things demanding reason, you, sir or lady, will throw out one show-stopping word and end this debate once and for all. Semiconductors! This is Taiwan's golden goose, Taiwan's silicone shield, Taiwan's best defense. Semiconductors are basically chips, computer chips.
So let's run through the basics. 1. Every country in the world needs chips. 2. Chips are complicated to produce.
They're produced in this insanely complex process where they cut all these wafers into small little pieces and shipped off to different companies who placed in things like maybe your iPhone or your laptop or the newest thing that needs a semiconductor. But they're not really the final product. They're just a complex, crucial gear in the machine that moves the entire supply chain of the world.
From your iPhones, your fridge, your air filter.
The most advanced supercomputers, the most basic toaster ovens.
What's turning on your indicators, what's turning on your radio in your car, that's a chip.
Did you know that 92% of the world's best semiconductors come from the island of Taiwan? And these are the fancy ones, like the ones that are used in your best electronics. And globally, Taiwan has 63% of the market share of semiconductors. And there actually isn't a single industry that isn't incredibly reliant on semiconductors and incredibly reliant on Taiwan. Without them, you could use things like wood and stone, but those usually aren't as cool as computers to most people. The last decade, the semiconductor industry has actually exploded in demand and value. In fact, last year, Taiwan's most successful semiconductor company gave an average bonus of $44,000 to all 57,000 employees. And this was a year with electrical grid failures and the worst drought in 50 years. Just to keep the factories going, they had to ship water across the ocean.
Manufacturers use large amounts of ultra-pure water to clean factories and wafers. TSMC's facility alone used more than 63 tons of water a day in 2019.
Yet they couldn't even keep up with demand. So stop telling your kids to become doctors, people. The future is in chips. So what would happen if a worldwide shortage of semiconductors occurred? Well, the reality is you're living in one right now. Now, this isn't even a remotely serious shortage. This is all cylinders firing to meet the demand. But what do we see right now? We see a systemic breakdown of the global supply chain, record inflation, price issues, product shortages, and worst of all, the inability to buy expensive things that make video games look really, really nice.
What is the link between 60,000 Ford pickup trucks and you not getting a PlayStation 5? A global shortage of chips.
In July of 2021, 17 auto factories halted or reduced production due to a semiconductor shortage. Factories like Toyota couldn't make cars anymore.
Cars today are far more complex than ever before. They need anywhere from several hundred semiconductors to more than 1,000.
The auto industry literally just started shutting down their factories due to the shortage. And the calculated cost in 2021 to the global auto industry was $210 billion and 7 million cars that didn't get made. And this is why semiconductors are Taiwan's silicone shield. The entire global supply chain heavily relies on Taiwan.
This is infrastructure.
So if China wants to take Taiwan by force, it has to overcome the semiconductor issue. Otherwise, it risks upsetting the entire global supply chain. And China knows this. I mean, I use the internet for a lot of research, and China, like, of course, they would just,
就很多外网都会被禁掉，比如说 YouTube， 还有 SoundCloud， 还有 Instagram、Twitter、Facebook、Google, everything.
The most natural course for China would be to make them themselves become self-reliant, and then if they wanted to do something as crazy as taking Taiwan by force, it doesn't rock the entire global supply chain. There's only one problem though. China has tried that, and they haven't been that successful.
There have been numerous failures in terms of China's domestic chip development effort. SMIC is an example of a success, but there have been plenty more that have fallen by the wayside. Literally hundreds.
Since 2014, they've invested $51 billion into becoming self-reliant and recreating a semiconductor industry. And as of 2020, they only produce 17% of their own semiconductors, and these are really low quality ones that you're not gonna find in an iPhone. The reality though is you can't just throw billions of dollars at this and fix the problem and recreate the technology because it's really complex.
That's why the number of manufacturers at the industry's cutting edge has fallen from over 25 in 2000 to just 3.
There are fewer and fewer companies actually producing leading-edge silicon for a very simple reason. You need $15–20 billion to build just one semiconductor factory, and that factory is obsolete within 5 years.
It takes immense logistical support just to operate the foundries. China is even sanctioned and not allowed to get the tools that they need if they wanted to recreate the high-quality semiconductors. But even if they had the tools, there's a worldwide talent shortage in the industry, meaning China can't even hire the people to do the job and tackle it quickly because there's such a demand. And experts even say that China's chip industry is a decade or so behind Taiwan, and the gap's only gonna widen in the following years. So recreating it, it's just not a realistic option, especially in the near future. Well, what if China gets on boats with like some really huge guns? I'm talking dirty, hairy cannons, and just yeehaws its way over and says, make the chips or we shoot ya. That approach would require a very flawed understanding of the semiconductor industry. They've operated for 3 decades on a just-in-time model, which literally has no slack. They operate in a method with no real inventory, so they deliver the exact required amount of components exactly when you need them.
And there are really only a few companies that understand the brutal economics of the industry and that they can play that game and win.
Bloomberg intelligence analyst Charles Shum said, if a semiconductor fabrication plant is suddenly halted by a power outage, they can lose what is equivalent to 1 month of output. It's not just the wafers in fabrication that have to be abandoned, all machines have to be put in idle for maintenance and recalibration. So just a power outage and they throw away a month's supply of chips, even if they're 4 weeks into the 6-week process. And with no surplus in the industry, a simple hiccup such as a little power outage could push back the global semiconductor supply chain by months and the entire world supply chain.
At the same time, China fires guided missiles from the mainland and deploys tons more jets, and they all start firing in a fast, highly coordinated attack. The target here is anything that Taiwan can use to defend itself, like weapons that can shoot down planes or boats that are coming onto the island. I mean, this could be anything. Radar, communication nodes, military command centers, navy bases, bridges, communication networks, power stations.
Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
This idea of bombarding Taiwan with a bunch of missiles just isn't really a good option. If one hits the Taiwan water supply, the global supply chain is halted. If one hits the Taiwan power grid, the global supply chain is halted. So China would need pinpoint accuracy, or otherwise it upsets the entire global supply chain for months or even years.
So if Taiwan was suddenly cut off by a China invasion, for example, there is no TSMC replacement.
Let's say if Apple decides to find another partner, it will take years for them to get this other chip maker to be ready, if at all.
Seizing factories? That's just too risky and complex. And employees are probably not gonna want to go to work if missiles start flying, right? Instead, they're probably gonna try to evacuate and hide long before that happens, or when it happens. And that's not even considering the realistic possibility that we might need semiconductors to fix the supply chain, to fix the semiconductors. And without that, it just ushers in this prolonged dark age of technology that hasn't existed in our lifetime.
Only those mobile enough to scavenge, brutal enough to pillage would survive.
There's simply no way around the fact that invading Taiwan is declaring economic war on the entire globe. It's China literally saying, I will be the one to upset every single nation on Earth. And for a nation that cares a little bit about face and appearance to the rest of the world, it'd be very difficult to see them doing that. The kicker, China actually accounts for 60% of the world's demand for semiconductors. War on Taiwan is declaring war on the entire globe, even themselves. So even if we're safe today, Taiwan needs to maintain its technological advantage, or it does risk a greatly increased chance of conflict in the future. But that's not anytime soon. China knows it just isn't smart to handle things through force over here, which is why only an insane person willing to burn everything down to get their way would actually attempt an invasion of Taiwan. And if something happened here, people would notice, and people would probably stop confusing us with Thailand pretty quickly. Whether you realize it or not, you may owe Taiwan more than any other country in the world for the quality of life you have. Because the truth is, without Taiwan, we don't have computers, or really electronics. So say goodbye to your espresso machines, your TV, the internet, your cars, and maybe get ready to be a farmer, if you can even do farm equipment without that. And even warmongers, bend those missiles into plowshares. Your military won't even be able to repair itself unless you start kicking the digital components out of your technology and go back to vacuum tubes. When push comes to shove, I'd be very careful, because Taiwan, ironically, may just be the most powerful nation on Earth.
Why is semiconductor important or interesting? Because it changes your life.
So I am comfortable emphatically saying Taiwan will not be invaded, especially anytime soon. I sleep well at night, but if tomorrow I wake up and it's Red Dawn 2022, I still wouldn't kick myself or regret that stance. Like, crazy people do crazy things. And all that would mean is, despite strong logic and severe consequences, madness prevailed. And it wouldn't be the first time. Wars have started over far lesser things. But as a Christian, I also confidently know who's really in charge and where I'm going when I die. So I still sleep well at night, even during a global conflict. In the end, my advice for the world is, the next time Uncle Larry starts talking about how Taiwan's days are numbered, you should probably turn to them and just proudly shout who really holds the power in this relationship. Semiconductors! Thank you for joining us today, and let us know if you have questions about the cross-strait conflict or Taiwan's place in the world of government and politics. We've studied what an invasion would look like and the likelihood and much more related to this issue, but until then, we're just gonna go back to offending people over what they believe rather than what they fear. Please take a moment to like, comment, subscribe, and it could get a little bit heated in the comments, but what do you feel about this situation? Am I right? Am I wrong? Do you think computers are important? Because if you do, I'm probably right. Please do us a favor too. If somebody is on your Facebook saying stuff like, Taiwan's next, which I've seen like 30 times last week.
I've been saying China, 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 China.
Please share this video with them and at least give them a little bit of perspective, because this actually affects people's lives. Until next time, see you later. Semiconductors are basically chips. It doesn't look like I pulled it out of it at all. It's beautiful. Semiconductors. I should never be a magician.